Hello and welcome. My name is Groudon and this is Steam Sequence, a series where I complete Steam games in alphabetical order to hopefully uncover some diamonds in the rough. Unfortunately, this means playing through a lot of garbage. Today we'll be playing Global, a billiards puzzle game. Do you love mini golf? What about billiards? Do you enjoy going to raves? Ever wanted a game that combines all three of these things and then subtracts the fun from it all? Well, Global, a billiards puzzle game, might be the game for you. This game comes to us from the devs of the first game in our series, WTF OMG Games, and that means we know the level of quality to expect from Global. This game actually released 2 years before to Bitzog, which is interesting because I don't think their game development skills increased at all during that time. Global costs $3.39 and needs 58 megabytes of space, which is weird because it downloads almost 140 megabytes of content. Hopefully, it's not 80 megabytes of viruses. Upon starting the game, we are treated to this lovely title screen, which isn't the worst we've seen, but it's still pretty awful. The font is a strange choice, and using a blue highlight on a blue font isn't a great decision, but hey, it's functional. Our good friend Kevin MacLeod is back again, providing all 5 music tracks, so be prepared for some repetition if you decide to pick up this game. In the options, we have the bare minimum of resolution, anti-aliasing, and VSync. Separate sliders for music and sound effects are a nice touch to have, but on the bright side, they managed to keep the menu in the center of the screen, and the text at a legible size. Not sure why they managed to get it right here, but wrong 2 years later. It's almost like producing good quality games isn't their goal. Right, let's tear off the bandage and see what we're in for this time. Global is, at its core, a puzzle game that uses elements from mini golf and billiards and then dumps glow-in-the-dark paint over everything to make it look interesting. The aim is to sink all of the other balls by using yours to move them around. The premise itself is okay, and could even be good if it were implemented well, but it's not. The blue line coming from the ball shows the predicted direction of travel, and you can adjust the angle before charging it up with the spacebar. In an ideal world, the mouse would be used to aim, as its main purpose is to allow a user to aim with pinpoint accuracy. There's a good reason why in most games aiming a gun is controlled with the mouse, not with the keyboard. The devs disregarded that and opted to use the keyboard for aiming instead. A and D control large movements in clockwise and anti-clockwise directions, and W and S do the same, but for small increments. You can still get reasonably consistent aiming with this method, but it's much slower and clunkier and just simply unnecessary when you have access to a mouse. What is interesting, and very annoying, is that the blue line isn't always accurate, especially when bouncing off walls. And given the nature of this game, you'll likely be doing this a lot. Being even a little off can lead to complete misses, even in instances when the blue line shows the direction after a bounce, and that's largely down to the slightly wonky physics. I can't describe it, but I'm sure you'll see it in action in the background footage. The wonky aiming mechanics are sadly just the tip of the poor design choice iceberg. Let's talk about scoring. You start the level with 1 point. Every time you sink a ball, you gain a point. Every time you shoot but don't sink anything, you lose a point. If a ball falls off the stage or is destroyed, you lose 2 points. It also means that if you don't sink a ball on your first shot, you will reset. Thankfully, in a small mercy from the devs, the final score doesn't matter. As long as it's more than 0, you will still complete the level. You do also have the ability to reset at any time by holding R, and you will do this frequently, as you will often find yourself in a no-win situation where continuing to play is pointless. And to top things off, the reset animation is super slow, making you regret every time that it has to be done. All in all, this makes for a very punishing system that demands precision, but then doesn't provide you with the tools to do so. The difficulty also ramps up super quickly to almost unfair levels. Randomly appearing explosives, falling floors, rotating obstacles. Global throws a lot at you, and the only way to progress is with a lot of patience. This means that unfortunately, the puzzle solving often goes out the window and it becomes a case of trial and error until the solution finally happens by chance. I'll say this once, loud and clear in case any game devs are watching. Puzzle games should not have elements of random chance in them. Imagine trying to solve a Rubik's Cube, but sometimes after making a move, one of the tiles will change to a different colour. Trying to solve it immediately becomes pointless, as no amount of strategizing or planning will make up for the randomness. All of that said, I did manage to finish this game after about 8 hours of self-inflicted torture. I have a feeling that I may be one of the only people in existence to have done so, given that I was unable to find guides or playthroughs of any sort. That either makes me really special or really, really good at making poor life decisions. There's not too much more to say about Global in terms of gameplay or mechanics, but given the lack of coverage for this game, I do want to provide a short walkthrough for anyone else in the future that happens to stumble into this game. So if you want to skip to the end, please jump ahead to the timestamp currently on screen. Otherwise, stick around if you want to see just how ridiculous some of these levels get. Still here? Right, then buckle in because we have 20 levels of this to get through. Keep in mind that what you're about to see is simply how I finished each level. Not necessarily the best method, but it's the method that worked for me. Level 1. This is set up like a traditional pool table, but with less balls. No real strategy is needed here, just break apart the triangle and then begin sinking the balls one by one. It's a good level to get used to the controls and to lull you into a false sense of security. Level 2. The difficulty ramps up quickly. The red markers on the floor will destroy any ball that touches it, so you need to watch your angles here. I found it best to start with the ball in the top left, then top center, then bottom right, middle right, then top right, then bottom middle. You can get nice clean shots for most of these as long as you control your power. If done correctly, you'll have plenty of points left over, so send the ball on the bottom left into the red marker on the left hand side of the screen, and then you're free to sink the final ball into the left hand pocket. This one took about 15 minutes to beat, and it wasn't too bad. Level 3. This is where the difficulty spikes massively. Firstly, the red explosive markers are back, and now we have an obstacle over the centre, making the holes only accessible from certain angles. Additionally, we need to start with quite a tricky angled shot. Fair warning, this level took me 45 minutes to beat. Start by hitting the middle left ball in using an angled shot. If your angle is off, either the ball won't go in or you'll bounce into an explosive. Now, I'm going to pause here. Other than the ball we sunk, do you notice anything else that's changed? I'll give you a second. This right here is why this level is awful. Additional explosives will appear in completely random positions roughly every 10 to 20 seconds. That means you'll want to be super fast and hope that you get lucky with their placement. My tactic was to clear the left side first, then depending on my ball placement and where the explosives appeared, either sink the top or bottom ball on my way to the right. Don't be afraid to spend a couple of points to reposition yourself, sink the two on the right hand side, and then either sink or destroy the final ball depending on how many points you have remaining. Level 4. This level is actually okay and uses vertical space quite well. It would be even better if the depth perception weren't so awful. For the first shot, don't change the angle and charge it up all the way. It should land and knock the ball in for you. Perform another fully charged shot to launch yourself up and knock the first ball in at the same time. You should roll back slightly but not hit the bombs. Now spend a point to launch yourself to the top of the screen. A 3/4 charged shot will do it nicely. Now sink the ball closest to you, then use up a point to angle behind the ball on the right, then sink it in too. Now aim to the left with a fully charged shot to launch to the top platform. If your aim is good, you might be able to sink the final ball at the same time. If not, just give it a little nudge in and be sure not to ricochet off the edge. Level 5. Another nasty level that took 40 minutes to beat. I started on the lower side with 3 balls, and using just the right angle, you can make all 3 balls collide and then sink the one closest to the hole. Now do the same trick on the top, and then use a point to head back down again. Sink one ball, then the other, then head back to the top for the final ball. You'll need to use some bounce shots here, and thankfully the directional line is fairly accurate in this level. Once the left is cleared, head through the archway and you'll appear on the right hand side. I tried to repeat the same maneuver as before, but accidentally fell off. Thankfully I had enough points, and this actually lined me up well to use a bounce shot to sink the last ball at the top. All that's left to do now is to work your way around the ring using angled or bounce shots to sink the remaining balls. You should have enough points that if, like me, 1 or 2 of your balls fall off the map, you'll still be okay. Level 6, another 40-minute level. For this one, the tiles fall away after your ball crosses them, meaning that the path you take is very important. You won't be able to double back. I always started with a ball on the bottom left, a down and right shot from where you start. This should bounce you back towards the hole on the left and line you up nicely to sink the center ball into the right hole. Falling off here was actually beneficial as it lines you up well to sink the top ball. From here, use a bounce shot to sink the bottom right ball. Now spend a point to move to the left, being careful not to overshoot. Now sink the center ball, followed by the top left ball. Level 7. This is the first level where I notice that the blue line is unreliable after bouncing, which is frustrating because it's absolutely necessary in this level. Begin by bouncing off the left wall and hitting the center ball into the top ball and sinking it. Then use a double bounce shot to sink the top left. Because of my rebounds, I opted to spend a point repositioning towards the center, then sink the remaining top ball. Use a bounce shot or just reposition for a better angle and sink the lower ball into the top hole. Lastly, reposition to the section on the right and sink the final ball into the lower right hole. Level 8. This one isn't as bad as it looks, but it needs a few tricky angles. It also introduces the eye markers that won't destroy a ball, but will push it in a random direction. For the first shot, aim straight left with full power. The ball should rebound off the wall and into the hole. Now aim for the center of the ball closest to you with about half power. If the angle is right, it will fall into the lower platform and hit the ball. If your angle is really good, the first ball will be sunk and the second ball will fall onto the final platform. Aim towards the top edge of the ball closest to the hole and sink it, and then with your remaining points, simply knock the last ball off the edge. Level 9. Now we have a combination of the eye markers and bombs. Yippee! Start with the top left ball and use a full powered bounce shot to knock it into the top hole. Reposition if needed. Then use another bounce shot to sink the bottom left ball into the top left hole. Reposition again, then sink the bottom ball into the bottom hole. The ricochet should move you back to the left, but you can reposition if necessary to sink the top ball into the top hole. Finally, sink the bottom right ball, and then either sink or destroy the final ball. Level 10. Back to more randomness. This level has a spotlight on the floor, and whenever any ball passes through them, a cube will fall in a random position. Usually it will just be a pain and block your path, but sometimes it will block a hole or fall onto a ball and cause it to move. This level will require a lot of luck, depending on where the blocks fall, so it's tough to give any tips for this one. I found it best to start by ricocheting the middle right ball into the top right ball and into the right hole. This gives good positioning for the bottom right ball. Once 2 balls are sunk, you have enough points to reposition, sink, and repeat. Good luck. Level 11, not actually as bad as it looks. Start with the lower right ball into the lower right hole. Reposition to the left, then sink the lower left ball into the left hole. Do this 2 more times for the remaining left-hand balls, starting with the top left. Then navigate back to the centre and use a well-angled shot to sink the top right ball into the top right hole. Level 12. This level is much worse than it looks. Begin by using a full power shot into the wall on the right. The resulting collision should sink the ball on the far left. Sink the remaining ball, then spend a point to navigate to the top left area. Aim to get behind the ball on the right and then sink it. If the angle is right, you'll be well positioned to sink the remaining ball. Now spend a point to navigate back towards the centre. Again, if your positioning is good, you could possibly sink the top ball from here. Otherwise, use another point to knock it towards the top right hole. You should be able to sink these 2 balls now. Aim downwards and sink the bottom right ball. And lastly, either reposition and sink the remaining ball, or if you have the points to spare, just blow it up using the spikes. Level 13, another level making use of the vertical space, which is great in theory, but results in some really weird angles. You'll need to sink the ball on the left into the lower left hole first, then the remaining ball on the platform in the lower right hole. Now use a point to jump over to the right platform, colliding with the ball furthest away. If you're able to get a good angle, you might be able to sink it into the lower right hole, but don't worry if you can't. Next, I opted to hit the final ball on the platform over the one in the centre and sink it into the lower left hole. Again, with good setup, you might be able to set up a chain shot and use the first ball to sink the second, but it's much harder to do. Next, knock the centre ball off the platform if you haven't done so already, and then it's just a matter of repositioning and sinking the remaining balls one by one. Level 14. Here we have a spotlight in the centre that will cause a block to fall down when a ball passes through it, which means you'll get a randomly placed block every time you sink a ball. There are also gaps around the stage to watch out for. Because of this, there's only so much advice to give as there is a lot of randomness here. The general aim is to start with the balls that are furthest out as they will be the easiest to position, but also the most likely to get blocked by a falling block. I used a rebound shot first to sink the lower left ball, followed by either the middle left or outer left depending on what happens next. Once you have the first few balls sunk, you should have enough points to reposition and then sink balls repeatedly, and just hope that the RNG is in your favour. Don't forget that as long as you have at least 3 points, the final ball can just be sent flying off the stage. Level 15. Another level with randomized floor bombs. This time, you will get an extra 2 bombs every time you sink a ball, but the placement changes every time. The best first move I found was to hit the lower edge of the closest ball on the right, causing a chain reaction that will sink the furthest right ball. You should then be able to easily sink a second, giving you enough free points to head over to the left side. The aim is to move the balls on the left closer to the hole so that the bombs are less likely to interfere. After this, it's a case of repositioning and sinking balls one at a time. Level 16. Appearances are deceiving here. For this stage, the floor is actually made out of wedges, all pointing towards the center. As your ball moves, any segment that it leaves will fall away. Start with the ball closest to you, then start working your way clockwise around the ring. As long as you don't use too much power, each shot should set you up well for the next, meaning that you will build up points so that you can send balls into the abyss as necessary. All in all, this one isn't too hard to beat. Level 17. This one is tough. Between the spike bombs, awkward placements, and gaps in the outer walls, there is a lot that can go wrong. My first tactic was to start with a ball on the lower left, but I wasn't able to make much progress. I eventually found that aiming for the top center ball works well, but the angle is tricky. You're aiming for a position just above the corner and the power bar about 3/4 full. When done correctly, you'll sink that ball and rebound down into a good position for the middle right ball. Sink this one, then reposition over to the right in order to sink the remaining 2 balls one at a time. Now you'll need to navigate to the left, getting behind this ball and then sinking it into the hole on the right. Reposition gently towards the lower left, then sink that ball into the lower left hole. I was unlucky here and knocked my ball off, but thankfully had a point to spare. If you can, navigate to the right and then get behind the rightmost ball. If you're like me, you'll need to do a bounce shot and keep your fingers crossed. A nice angled shot should sink the final ball without any trouble. Level 18. This level obviously uses height as a core mechanic. Here you will need to clear out each floor in order, as there is no way to return to a higher floor. You only have 1 ball to start with, and I advise ignoring the ones that look like they would line up as a chain shot. Instead, go full power and send the first ball flying in the corner to sink it. Then, gently drop down, staying close to the top in order to get a good angle for the next ball, then sink it as well. With the right momentum, you should fall down and to the left rather than to the right. You'll have 2 points here, so use the first to send the ball on the left down to the lower levels, then sink the ball on the right. Make sure to angle towards the top of the ball so that the collision sends you towards the top of the screen. You should fall down and you'll now be able to sink both of the balls on the right, repositioning after the first one if necessary. All that's left is to knock the remaining ball on this level down to the ground and then sink the final 2 balls one at a time. Level 19, the final real stage to deal with. This one can look like a bit of an optical illusion. The center rectangle is actually raised above the outer edge. Start with the lower left, and then the top left. Now, being careful of the rotating block, aim for the lower edge of the top right bowl to sink it. Nudge the closest ball a little to the left and then use a strong shot to sink it into the top left hole. With good timing and some luck, you'll bounce off the rotating block, but not off the stage. Navigate towards the ball in the lower left, setting yourself to sink it into the lower left hole with your next shot. Finally, head over to the right to sink the final ball. The timing is tricky, but manageable. And with that, the hardest level is beaten. Level 20. The final quote-unquote level is just a thank you screen. We don't want to spend too much time here, so just sink your own ball into the hole in the top right. If my guide helped you beat the game, you now owe me a like on this video. If you watched this section out of curiosity, well done! You've now seen everything the game has to offer, and you've saved yourself a few dollars and many hours of frustration. Global is many things. Well, maybe not many things, just a few. Regardless, fun is not one of those things. It's slow, repetitive, frustrating, boring, annoying, and soul-destroying. I had a couple of cool moments where a rebound shot worked and it felt kinda good. And then the elements of randomness screwed everything over and it was back to square one. There were also times that shots that looked like sure things just totally failed. A game like this needs rock-solid mechanics to be enjoyable, and Global fails at the first hurdle. Games like Super Meat Boy show that failure can be enjoyable if the player's time is respected. In that game, it only takes a second to reset from death, but Global drags it out. Visually, aside from the glow effect, there isn't anything that creates any kind of personality for the game. It ends up feeling quite bland, and some of the brighter levels, like the green or yellow themed ones, can be quite nauseating after a while. With all of these factors combined, the game feels really just bland and uninteresting. And because of that, I give Global a generic cube out of 10. As always, thanks for watching. If you liked this video, please leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more. New videos will be uploaded whenever they are done, so until next time, take care.